Welcome to Hard Questions, a Life Fellowship podcast series about trusting God when His timing does not make sense. In this episode, we ask, why wait? Through the story of Lazarus, we look at the pain of waiting on God, especially when we know He could have acted sooner. Mary and Martha believed Jesus could heal, but they had not yet imagined resurrection. This message reminds us that time spent waiting on God is never wasted. Not now does not mean not ever, and sometimes our greatest disappointment becomes the space where God brings our greatest victory.
So we're in a series called Hard Questions, and this is actually a really, really good series. It doesn't seem like it because we're talking about really challenging things. 2 weeks ago, in the first week, we talked about how essentially, the church for a long time, or a lot of different parts of Christianity, have liked to say things like, if you believe enough, if you give financially enough, if you pray enough, if you are good enough, God will save you from having to deal with any of the hardships in life. That is not true. We talked about how there are hardships in life, hard stop. We are going to lose people. We are going to have financial struggles. We are going to have situations in our life that are challenging. Some of them are teenagers and sitting in the front row right now. We're all going to have these things. The promise that Jesus gives us is that when we're following Him, when we're with Him, when we're His brother, sister, when we're children of God, when we come to God, He walks us through those things. And in a lot of times, even before we know Him, He's walking us through things. And so the hope and the promise is that we're not alone. Not that we won't have hardships. Even Jesus had hardships, okay? The promise is that we will not walk alone. Now, that sermon, to me, felt like the hardest one I'd ever given. Because there's this line that I had to walk, where on one hand, if I say things wrong, I take away all of your hope and all of your reason for loving Jesus. And I can't do that, because that's bad. But I also have to be honest and make sure that we're looking at life through sober eyes and not believing Christian-y lies about what we get if we're good enough. And so after that message, I talked to Pastor Kelly and I said, hey, did I do that right? I feel like that was rough. And he said, no, it was good. And I didn't take away hope. He said, okay, good. I trust Pastor Kelly's opinion. And then last week, we talked about we talked about lament and Selah, right? And the lament is something that God has given us to essentially complain about the hardships of life, where we get to unload all of the hardships and all of the stress and all of the struggle. We get to unload those things on His shoulders. The Bible says, cast your cares on Him because He cares for you, right? And so we get to do that. But then we also have this thing called Selah, which is essentially where we shut up and listen for a minute. So we get to unload all of our anger. We get to rant at the feet of God. But then if we sit down and be quiet for a minute, He's able to speak to us. And so after that message last week, Pastor Kelly texted me. He doesn't like me to call him pastor anymore. I don't know why, but I'm going to because he's not here and he can't stop me. So Pastor Kelly texted me and he said, did you feel that this week's message was harder than last week's? And I said, no. Because when we realize that God welcomes our hurt and our anger so that He can help us understand it better, that's freedom. That's freeing. That's an easy message to give. And so this whole series, coming into it, especially into that first message, I felt like it was super, super dark. I really did. And it is. It's hard because we are asking hard questions and the answers aren't what we want them to be, right? We want the answer to be, I say a prayer, Jesus, come into my heart, and then rainbows are everywhere, and as I walk around, confetti falls at my feet, and I just get to walk through life like a princess, and everything's amazing always. But that's not real. And I think most of us wouldn't like that anyway. So last week, if you're filling out your bulletins, I want to give you the fill-ins for the first two, if you're filling out your bulletin. We talked about how Christianity or various sects of Christianity over the last few generations have told us that we can't question God and we can't be angry with God. But that's not true. The Bible gives us piles. Almost every psalm starts with a lament. It starts with something that I'm frustrated. God, why are you letting my enemies trounce me? I don't want to die anymore, God. Why are you letting everybody kill me? Well, it's exaggeration, really. It's funny how many of the laments are highly exaggerated. My enemies are chewing on my bones like wolves. Are they now? Is that what that looks like? So we get to start with a lament. We get to express grief and sorrow, then we end with a Selah. When we pair our lament with our Selah, we allow God to speak into our situation. Okay? And when we pair our lament with our Selah, God is able to show us his heart. And that's what we see in every psalm. The core worship songs for Israel were laments paired with a Selah that comes to a conclusion of understanding. And that's what we have through Holy Spirit, right? We can unload, and then Holy Spirit speaks to us and brings us comfort and understanding and often closure. So today, we are talking about what about when God is late? What about when God is late? Why does it seem like God is late? Why did this thing happen? Couldn't he have showed up an hour earlier and kept this thing from happening? Well, J.R.R. Tolkien wrote it best in the words of Gandalf, "A wizard is never late, Frodo Baggins, nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to." We use this quote, and it is a very good quote. We use it to often make God more understandable, but that doesn't really help when his timing hurts. When we're waiting on a healing and we're suffering, when maybe we're trying to have a baby and it's not happening. Maybe we have relationship struggles that are not healing, that are not fixing, that are not coming together. When we're dealing with work issues or finance issues. Or if life has just been one thing after another, after another, after another, after another, after another, and we're just like, God, why aren't you here? I have been struggling and suffering for so long, and it just seems like there's one thing after another, after another, after another, after another. And guys, I will not lie to you. I know I'm not the only person in the room that's like this, but for me, it's been about 6 months of just about every day. The Monday that Nick passed away, Kelly called me and she told me, and I hung up the phone. And the first thing that I thought was, of course. Because it's one more thing. It's another thing on top of another thing on top of another thing on top of another thing. And I'm so worn out and I'm so tired and I'm so frustrated. And this is me being more honest, okay? I'm not trying to dump on you. I'm not trying to make you feel worse about the things that you're struggling with. I am being honest and transparent with you that just because you follow God and just because he blesses your life does not mean that you're immune to the struggles of life, okay? So the first thing I thought was, of course. And then I felt bad for making it about me. And then I ran through about 1,400 other things, feelings, whatever. We're going to look at the story of Lazarus this morning. And it's going to feel just a little bit insensitive in the light of Nick passing. And after tomorrow, I'll talk less about that when we're together. But today and tomorrow both, I'm talking about stories where people lived after they had been dead. And it's just one more thing where it's like, okay, God, what are you doing? Because this feels insensitive. But he's speaking to us of his heart. And so we're going to look at John chapter 11, most of chapter 11 this morning. And I'm going to push through it pretty quickly, so stick with me here, okay? A man named Lazarus was sick. He lived in Bethany with his sisters, Mary and Martha. This is the Mary who later poured the expensive perfume on the Lord's feet and wiped them with her hair. It's also the Martha that was like, Jesus, make her work. And Jesus was like, she chose the better thing. I'm not going to take it from her. Same story. Okay? Her brother Lazarus was sick. So the two sisters sent a message to Jesus telling him, Lord, your dear friend is very sick. But when Jesus heard about it, he said, Lazarus' sickness will not end in death. No, it happened for the glory of God so that the Son of God will receive glory from this. Now, Jesus isn't saying that God made Lazarus sick. Jesus is saying that Lazarus got sick and God is going to use it for his glory, okay? There's something I want us to pay attention to today, okay? And there's a bunch of things, guys. My brain's everywhere. Time spent waiting on God is never wasted. Time spent waiting on God is uncomfortable. Time spent waiting on God is exhausting sometimes, frustrating. But time spent waiting on God is never wasted. A few of us, a couple of guys and myself, were going through this book that it's about spiritual growth. And there's a cycle of spiritual growth that starts with God kind of recognizing things and bringing you through a quick growth time. And then there's a wall that you run into, and a lot of people will bounce off of that wall and go back to the top, and they'll just kind of live in this very shallow Christianity for all of their life. But it talks about how if you wait at that wall, and if you get quiet, and you just let God talk to you, and you just sit, eventually he pushes you through that wall. He takes you through that wall, and you come out more mature and stronger and more able on the other side, and you're able to grow through a complete cycle of growth through whatever situation it is that you're working through. And so when we get to that point, when we get to the point where it's like God's not here, we'll bounce off, and we'll bounce off the wall. We'll say, all right, then I will deal with it myself because God didn't show up on time. Almost never works. Or we'll hit that wall and we'll be like, well, God doesn't love me, I'm out. We'll hit that wall and we'll say, well, that didn't work. I'm going to go back to the last thing that did work. And that becomes religion, right? Trying to get God to do the same thing through ritual. Actually sounds like witchcraft, really. It's manipulation. And manipulation is as the sin of witchcraft. He quoted the Bible with a horrible tone for it. So time spent waiting on God is never wasted, no matter how hurtful, uncomfortable, whatever, okay? So although Jesus loved Martha, Mary, and Lazarus, he stayed where he was for the next 2 days. Finally, he said to his disciples, let's go back to Judea. But his disciples objected. Rabbi, they said, only a few days ago the people in Judea were trying to stone you. Are you going there again? Jesus replied, there are 12 hours of daylight every day. During the day, people can walk safely. They can see because they have the light of this world. But at night, there is a danger of stumbling because they have no light. Now, this is a side note. The New Testament is full of, look, I swear, the guys who wrote the New Testament, especially the Gospels, were as ADHD as I am. Because they'll be like, so Jesus was doing this thing, and then this thing, and then this other thing happened way over here that has nothing to do with what I was just talking about. We'll put that right here, and then we're going to talk about the other thing back here again. And they're constantly going back and forth, and this is one of those times. But I think that this moment is worth our look, okay? Because Jesus said there are 12 hours of daylight every day. During the day, people can walk safely. They can see because they have the light of this world. But at night, there is danger of stumbling because they have no light. I believe this moment was one where Jesus shared a truth about the future that wouldn't be understood until later. See, Jesus was pointing out that he needed to go back to Judea, even though there was danger, because there's only so much daylight. He was only going to be around for so long. And he needed to do as much work as he could while he could, so that when he was gone, there was a better foundation, better paths. He was saying, guys, we got to make hay while the sun shines, right? All right, moving on. Jesus gets back on topic. John 11 through 15. Then he said, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but now I will go wake him up. The disciples said, Lord, if he's sleeping, he will soon get better. They thought Jesus meant Lazarus was simply sleeping, but Jesus meant Lazarus had died. Real nice, Jesus. Way to get our hopes up and twist things a little bit. He didn't twist them. So Jesus told them plainly, Lazarus is dead. And for your sakes, I'm glad I wasn't there, for now you will really believe. Come, let's go see him. So right here we see a moment where Jesus was honest, and then he saw that they misunderstood, and so then he was more honest. He's like, no, he dead. Next verse, Thomas, nicknamed the twin, said to his fellow disciples, let's go and die with Jesus. Perfect attitude for this moment. Jesus is saying, Lazarus is dead. I'm going to bring him back to life. And Thomas is like, we all going to die. We're going to die. Jesus is like, I'm going to bring a guy back to life. And Thomas is like, but we're going to die. No, but, and so this struggle that Jesus had, the people that he was more honest with, the people that he was open with, still didn't understand the power that he carried and the authority that he had in this world. Well, let's go die. Good job, guy. John 11:17, when Jesus arrived at Bethany, he was told that Lazarus had already been in his grave for 4 days. Bethany was only a few miles down the road from Jerusalem, and many of the people had come to console Martha and Mary in their loss. When Martha got word that Jesus was coming, she went to meet him, but Mary stayed in the house. Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if only you had been here, my brother would not have died. Martha says, Jesus, if you weren't late, Jesus, if you were on time, this wouldn't have happened. Then she continues, but even now I know that God will give you whatever you ask. Okay, Martha says, if you had been on time, he wouldn't have died, but I know the Lord will still give you what you ask. So the thing about God and the thing about our journey is our understanding of late is based on our own desires and our own understanding. If I said, Mom, can I? And she said, maybe, it meant no, right? She just didn't want to argue. Well, all the moms know. I tried not to do that when my kids were little, but sometimes, man, it's just easier. Maybe, we'll see. Ask again in a month. But I want ice cream today. Ask in a month. Now, with God, not now doesn't mean not ever. We keep applying our understanding of parenthood and our understanding of time on God. But God's understanding of time and truth and honesty are not our understanding. And so when he says not now, it doesn't mean not ever. And so when Martha says, Jesus, you were late, Jesus is like, not late, not late. I'm just doing something you're not aware of. I'm doing something you've never seen before. Something amazing is going to happen, and if you're just patient for a minute, you'll see it. But there's a thing that if we can grasp as humans, especially as Americans, because we want something, we want it now. I can't tell you how many youth kids have been in a relationship and then they break up and they come to me just broken, like, they were the one, we were going to get married. I'm like, dude, you're 13. They were the one. I tell them this. The right person at the wrong time is the wrong person. What are you going to do at 13, 14, 15, 16? What are you going to do? Are you ready to get married? Are you ready to have children? Are you ready to create a life with this person? No. The right person at the wrong time is the wrong person. And the same thing goes with everything else. The right thing at the wrong time is the wrong thing. One time, Israel needed water. And God told Moses, hit the rock with your staff. And he did. And water flowed out. And then another time, Israel needed water. So Moses goes to the same rock, and God says, speak to the rock. Moses hits it instead. Water still comes because God honors our mistakes sometimes. He honors us through our mistakes. But that was the wrong thing, and that was the action that kept Moses from going into the promised land. The right thing at the wrong time is the wrong thing. And our understanding of the world isn't always correct. So Jesus told Martha, your brother will rise again. Yes, Martha said, he will rise when everyone else rises at the last day. Yes, we'll see him in heaven. Oh, Martha. I feel bad for Martha because the way that I'm sure she was way more awesome than than the Bible says, because the Bible just kind of makes her out to be the person that's just a little bit short of understanding all the time. And I can't believe that she was that short-sighted on everything all the time, but she got recorded that way. But in this case, Jesus says he'll rise again, and she's like, yeah, we'll see him in heaven, yay. But why shouldn't that be her expectation? Why shouldn't that be her understanding of what Jesus said? Her expectations of Jesus are based in her history with him. She's seen him heal. She's seen him keep people from dying, but she's never seen someone brought back from the dead. She doesn't know that's possible because she hasn't seen it. But just because we haven't seen it doesn't mean it's not possible. Just because we haven't seen, guys, if you told me 8 months ago we would have new carpet right now, there was no way. There was no way. If you told me a year ago that if you told me in January that by the end of this year, all of this would be different, I wouldn't have believed you. Not because I don't think God is capable, but because I didn't think it was that high on his priority list. I was like, well, God's got to work on this thing, and then he's got to work on this thing, and he's got to work on that thing, and then maybe someday he'll let us upgrade our building. And then the answer to this and the ability to upgrade the building came when I wasn't looking for it. Our district supervisor, or not our district supervisor, our district representative, whatever, our area pastor, just one day on the phone with Pam said, hey, did you guys apply for this grant? And Pam said, what grant? And then she applied for it. Next thing we know, $30,000 is coming our way. That was specifically earmarked for building upgrades. 10 of it actually went back into our savings for upgrades that we already had done, from fixing air conditioners and doing the carpet in the east building. Foursquare paid for all of that, even though we'd already done it. And then another 20 was for the flooring and for the wall that we're going to put in the entryway. There's going to be a wall in the entryway, 4 3-foot doors. It's going to be huge, super cool. It's going to close so that when people are talking while they're having coffee, we can still do what we need to do in here. It'll be a little bit safer because there's not a direct shot into the room. And it's just going to be really, really cool. But all of this, I did not think it was happening. Not because I didn't think God was capable, but because I didn't think it was on his priority list. But here's the thing that I want you to write down, or if you're not writing things down, I want you to really consider. If God only ever meets our expectations, how do you expect he'll ever exceed them? Say it like this: God can't exceed your expectations if he's only meeting them. If God gave us what he wants, if God gives us what we want, he can't give us better. But he wants to give us better. His plan is to give us better, bigger, more. And I don't mean necessarily in financial means, okay? I'm not preaching prosperity here. I'm very much preaching, hopefully, a sober, balanced message. But the reality of what God is he's a good, good father, and he wants to give his children good gifts. And if he's going to give you a little bit, he wants to give you more. And I think too often, we say, God, why are you late? When he's saying, I'm not late. I'm just showing up with more than you expect. But it requires a little more time. But Mary and Martha and everybody else didn't have a grid that allowed for Jesus to do what he was going to do. Okay, John 11:25. Jesus told her, I am the resurrection and the life. Anyone who believes in me will live, even after dying. Everyone who lives in me and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this, Martha? Yes, Lord, she told him, I've always believed you are the Messiah, the Son of God, the one who has come into the world from God. Then she returned to Mary. Now, Martha's understanding is still seeing Jesus bringing Lazarus back in heaven. She is seeing a future like when everybody gets to go to heaven, that's what she's seeing. That's what she understands. So she returns to Mary. She called Mary aside from the mourners and told her, the teacher is here and wants to see you. So Mary immediately went to him. Jesus had stayed outside of the village at the place where Martha had met him. When the people who were at the house consoling Mary saw her leave so hastily, they assumed she was going to Lazarus' grave to weep. So they followed her there. Because when you're going to a grave to weep and cry because you miss a person, you want a crowd. You want to be surrounded by as many people in that, like boogers, tears, bawling. You want people. You don't. I don't. Look, if I'm crying, get out. Because with my crying comes rage, and if you're not in my two people in the world that I'm okay with seeing me bawl, get out. All right. So anyway, these guys are like, hey, she's going to go cry. Let's go watch. And sounds super nice. You guys get how weird that is? Are you awake this morning? Okay. If you're awake, I'm fine. If it's not funny to you, gosh, that's weird. You guys would probably go stand and watch somebody cry at a grave. It's probably your jam. You probably get up on Saturday morning, you're like, well, I could go garage sailing, or I can go to the... They assumed she was going to Lazarus' grave to weep, so they followed her there. When Mary arrived and saw Jesus, she fell at his feet and said, Lord, if only you had been here, my brother would not have died. She doesn't get it either. She doesn't have faith that Jesus can do more than what she expects. She expected him to show up and heal her brother. He was late to her understanding. When Jesus saw her weeping and saw the other people wailing with her, wailing with her, a deep anger welled up in him, and he was deeply troubled. Where have you put him? He asked them. They told him, Lord, come and see. Then Jesus wept. I want you to pay attention to this moment. Jesus tells the disciples, I'm going to bring him back. Jesus comes and he tells Martha, I'm going to bring him back. Mary comes, and Jesus is surrounded by people that are just broken and bawling. First he gets angry, then he gets troubled, then he weeps. See, Jesus is not blind to our struggles. He's not blind to our heartache. He's not unaware of the pain that we have waiting on him. He knows the pain of waiting is real. And he has empathy for us. Jesus knew Lazarus was still coming back. Jesus knew the plan. He was ready to do it. He was there. He knew that within the hour, Lazarus would be up and walking and talking again. But still he wept. I would like you to consider that your greatest disappointment might be the space required for God to bring your greatest victory. Your greatest disappointment might be the space required for God to bring your greatest victory. Jesus, if you had shown up. Jesus, if you had been on time. Jesus, if you had come when we called you, he would still be alive. And Jesus is saying, I understand you're disappointed, but I'm going to do something greater. 11:36, the people who were standing nearby said, see how much he loved him. They saw Jesus weeping and said, see how much he loved him. But some said, this man healed a blind man. Couldn't he have kept Lazarus from dying? Next line, Jesus was still angry as he arrived at the tomb, a cave with a stone rolled across its entrance. Now, I want us to stop and look at Jesus' anger. Because first of all, if Jesus was angry, that means anger isn't necessarily a sin, which means that when the Bible says, don't sin in your anger, it means you can be angry. Don't beat people while you're doing it. There's a much longer explanation for that. But anger, human emotion, not a sin. Yeah? Why was Jesus angry? And I think traditionally we might hear that Jesus was angry because of the people's lack of faith. And it makes sense, right? Jesus is like, I'm going to bring him back to life. And they're like, we're all going to die. And then Jesus is like, I'm going to bring him back to life. And they're like, you were late. He's like, I'm going to bring him back to life. You were late. And he's like, I'm going to bring him back to life. And then everybody's crying. And he's like, don't you have faith in me? Haven't you seen all the miracles I've done? Oh, I'm so frustrated with you people for not having faith, because you should know at this point that I can do what I want to do, or that I can do what I'm going to do, right? So anger makes sense from our point of view. But I believe Jesus was angry because his people were suffering. Because Jesus didn't get angry until he saw the people crying, until he saw how heartbroken they were. That's when he got angry. He was angry at the injustice of death. He was angry at the pain of mourning. To kind of bring you guys, let me just give you you ever get angry when your kids get hurt? There have been times when my kids get hurt and I get angry because my children are hurt. And in the moment, it feels like I'm angry at them. It's because I'm weak and because I don't control myself very well when I'm angry. When I see my people hurt, it angers me because they shouldn't be hurt, because it's not fair, it's not right. Right now, I'm very angry. Xander, I'm going to tell him. Xander has to have another surgery on his arm. They have to remove the plates, so it's going to cost him another surgery, another incision set, another healing time. And it all stems from him breaking his arm in a way that shouldn't have broken, but did because the angles were just right because of geometry. And then the doctor that set it didn't set it correctly. And then when he checked on it 3 days later, said, no, it's fine. It was obviously not fine. And then his arm healed so crooked that they had to go and straighten it last year. But because of the nature of the way that his arm is working and the way that the plates are sitting in there, it's causing inflammation and it's causing his muscles to get hurt. And so we have to go in again and remove those. And as a father, I am so angry because my son doesn't deserve this. No kid deserves this. But it's a reality of life that we have to walk through together. But I believe that Jesus wasn't angry at their lack of faith. I believe that Jesus was angry because they were suffering. Because God did not create us to suffer. God did not create us in a world where we would have suffering and loss and all of these negative feelings. God created heaven on earth. He created Eden. He created a space for humans to walk with him and talk with him and exist in the world with him at the same time. And that was robbed of us by sin. And so now we have death and we have pain and we have anger and we have frustration. And in this moment, I believe that Jesus looked out at his people and he saw the hurt that they should not be experiencing, and he got angry. So Jesus was still angry when he arrived at the tomb. A cave with a stone rolled across its entrance. It was a cave with a stone rolled across its entrance. Roll the stone aside, Jesus told them. But Martha, the dead man's sister, protested, Lord, he's been dead for days. The smell will be terrible. Jesus responded, didn't I tell you, you would see God's glory if you believe? So they rolled the stone aside. Then Jesus looked up to heaven and said, Father, thank you for hearing me. You always hear me, but I said it out loud for the sake of all these people standing here. God always hears you. Then Jesus shouted, Lazarus, come out. And the dead man came out, his hands and feet bound in grave clothes, his face wrapped in a headcloth. Jesus told them, unwrap him and let him go. I think the biggest reason for believing that Jesus was angry at the injustice and not at the people for lack of faith is that he did not address their lack of faith. He addressed lack of faith other times, in other situations, but in this situation, he did not. In this situation, his anger led him to the grave. All right, so we're closing. The older I get, the truer this song is. A song written by Garth Brooks. We've referenced it before. I'm going to reference it again, but right now I'm just going to read you the verses in the chorus. Garth Brooks writes, just the other night at a hometown football game, my wife and I ran into an old high school flame. And as I introduced them, the past came back to me, and I couldn't help but think of the way things used to be. She was the one that I'd wanted for all times. Each night I'd spend praying that God would make her mine. And if he'd only grant me this wish I wished back then, I'd never ask for anything again. Sometimes I thank God for unanswered prayers. Remember when you're talking to the man upstairs, just because he doesn't answer doesn't mean he doesn't care. Some of God's greatest gifts are unanswered prayers. It seems trivial, But it's so very true. If you think back in your life of all the prayers you prayed, of all the wishes you wished, of all the things that you wanted that you didn't get, that would have negatively affected what you did get. Sometimes I thank God for unanswered prayers because he knows better than I do. Because he set me up better than I could have ever dreamed. And at this point in my life, I have done a lot of things that I'm embarrassed of. I've done a lot of things I wish I didn't do. And as much as I regret some of the things in my past, even in my childhood, the pain, the struggles that I dealt with as a teen, still the darkest time in my life. Knowing what I know now and knowing what came from God not answering those prayers, I wouldn't change a thing. Because the only way that God led me here to this moment, to have this wife, these children, to get to work with these people, none of it could have happened if he answered my short-sighted prayers. If he had met my prayers, he couldn't have exceeded them. And he's exceeded so much in my life. And yeah, there's times of hurt and there are times of struggle. And right now I'm in a time of struggle where it's just been one thing after another for months. I know it's going to be okay because it's always been okay. And when I don't understand something, I don't get angry at God, lament, yes. But I also understand that he's my good father who knows better. And he's going to make better for me. And I have to have faith in that if I wake up tomorrow, God's hand is in it, and he's leading me somewhere good. That's the hope. That's the dream. God, I thank you so much for your heart for us, for your love for us, for your willingness to be a good father and not just give us what we want. Because God, a good father doesn't just give us what we want. I remember this time when Xander was 4, maybe 3. We were building his toolbox. And we're getting him his first bit of tools for different things, and we were going to go get him a hammer. And so we're at Walmart, and I had a list of things that we needed to do. And I'm walking down the aisles, and I'm looking for different things, and we were in the balloon aisle, okay? Kid should have been super stoked to be in the balloon aisle, but no, he was there for a hammer. That's what he wanted. And he started throwing a fit. He might have been 2. He was little. But I picked him up, and he was losing it. I picked him up, and I put him on a shelf, and he was this high. The shelf was here. His butt was there. And I said, Xander, look at me. Who am I? Dad. Do I know what you want? Yeah. Do I know what you need? Yeah. Don't you think that I will get you there in time? Yeah. I said, okay, then please be patient. We'll finish this stuff out and I'll get you what you need. We're going to end up in the hammer section, I promise. So he calmed down and I put him back on the ground and I was holding his hand. Or he might have been holding my pocket. I used to make my kids hold my pocket when we were in stores because then I didn't have to be like this hurting my back because I have back issues. So they'd hold my pocket. It was great because I have 2 kids and I have 2 pockets. And so we were in the balloon aisle. We were looking at something that I needed for youth or for church or something. And this older gentleman, never saw him before, never saw him again. He just kind of walks by, and as he walks by me, he goes, "Good job, Dad." That meant so much to me. But I think God's doing the same for us a lot of the time. Don't you know who I am? Don't you know that I know what you need? And can you please just trust me to get you where you need to be in the right time? God, I thank you for your patience with us and for your willingness to work with us and walk with us. God, I thank you that you take our laments and you take them seriously and that you have empathy for our feelings. When we're hurt, when we're frustrated, when we don't understand what's going on around us, you have empathy for us. Jesus, that's why you came, so you could walk in the dirt with us and understand what it is to be human, what it is to have these chemicals running through your body that make you feel these things in these ways. That's why you're such a good leader for us, because you understand us. God, I thank you so much. And I pray that you would give us more understanding, better understanding, and that we would learn to carry your patience through situations. So instead of getting angry and frustrated and flustered, we get peaceful. And we take a moment, we Selah, and we rest and we listen and we wait for you to bring us through. Because God, you always bring us through because you are faithful and you are true. And we love you. In your name we pray. Amen.